Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wanted to dive deep and heal your heart, then do we have the Rumi Tales of the Spirit show for you. Today I'll be talking with KAMLA Kapur, award-winning author, poet, Rumi scholar, and the author of a soulful, heart-expansive book, Rumi Tales of the Spirit. And that's just what I want to talk with her about today, about Rumi's writings, teachings, and a journey to healing the heart. That, plus we'll talk about coal, petroleum, and a gas stand, the Himalayas and San Diego, giant pearls and a king, the wisest man in Athens, drinking the dregs of doubt, a jug with 5 spouts, hearing aids and janitors, oh my, and what in the world a goat herd and a godhead has to do with anything. So welcome to the show, Kamla. Are you ready to shine?
Oh, yes. I'm already glowing. See, my headphones are glowing. My mouthpiece is glowing.
Woohoo!
Yes.
And I didn't even have to tweak the video for them to be glowing. I like it. So, Kamla, before we dive right into things, where did you grow up?
I grew up in India. I was born and brought up there till I was 20 years old. And then I came to America to study. I didn't want to do the traditional thing, which is as soon as you turn 16, 17, you start thinking about marriage. And I wanted to get an education. I wanted to experience the world. So my father said, had just retired from the army, and he said, I don't have the money to send you. So I said, what if I had to get married tomorrow? Would you have money for that? And he said, yes. I said, can I have it to go to America? And he said, yes.
Kamla, where did this spirit come from?
My spirit?
Yes, because that is going against such a social norm there, and it's the way you say it, it's an expected. Well, of course I'm going to find a way to go to America. Of course I'm not getting married right now. Of course I'm going to pursue my education.
Yes, it's a very mysterious thing where we get our spirit from. I um I attribute some of that to my father because while my mother was pregnant with me, my father always prayed to get a certain kind of person for the fetus in the belly, so to speak. And then he always told me that his prayer was fulfilled. So I attribute it to that, but I also attribute it to his actually being able to uh, his spirit that knew what he wanted. So he was a very spiritual person, and so was my mother. So I figure that I have good karma somewhere. I'm happy about that.
I absolutely love it. Before this interview, my wife is now 7 weeks pregnant today. She was exhausted, so she was laying in the bed that's in the studio right here so that she could be close to me as I was preparing for this interview. And I do prayers for the fetus as well with this whole list of intention work. And she goes, aren't you going to leave it up to God? I'm like, yeah, but it's a 2-step dance. I can put it out there.
Yes. Wow, that's great. So I mentioned this just in time. Intention plays a huge part in what happens to us, but a surrendered intention. And by that, I mean an intention that you elicit help for. You say to yourself, I intend this, but may this also be the intention of the universe. So you align yourself with a larger power, and so that your desires and the desires of the universe kind of get into sync. So that's important. If we pay too much attention on our own efforts, then we can get too egotistical and too unhumble.
I completely agree. The line that I use and that I teach people when we do intention work or when we teach intention work is for my highest good, the highest good of all, or something better. And then I go to complete surrender. I use God. You could use universe, source, whatever you want. I go, thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. I am not in charge.
Exactly. Exactly. And, the image of a little boat comes to me. You're on a stormy sea. And I've written a book also on Guru Nanak, who is the first guru of the Sikh religion.
Yeah.
And he uses the metaphor a lot. We are tiny little boats in a turbulent ocean. And what we're doing is we want to get ashore, and we're praying for calm weather. We're praying for safety, and you're surrendered, because you could be toppled any time. We've seen it around in
Oh,
our
yeah.
world, you know and to have the humility to know that, and to pray from it, and to ask for help, and to ask for guidance, I think is one of the greatest things that human beings can do, because asking for guidance elicits our higher selves.
Mhm.
It is within us, and our higher selves are in us. So by praying, we have recourse, and we are addressing not this person in the sky, but this redefining God as practically everything that exists, in every particle of the universe, suffusing and perfusing it.
I love it. Oh, go ahead.
Thank you. So, I'm big on prayer, and I'm also big on surrendering. In fact, there is a whole section in the book on surrender to the cosmic will, where and you what is it you surrender? Surrender's got a bad rap in our times. Surrender means, oh, you surrender to all the bad things of life. And there is a time in our lives when we stand up, and we don't surrender to political injustice, for example, or we don't surrender to racism, or we don't surrender to the way people are discriminated against. Because that's inborn. We are surrendering to our need to fight, you know but when we have done everything that we can do to get a certain result, and the outcome is a particular way that you can't control, that is what you surrender to. You don't give up fighting, but you surrender to what is at that moment of speaking, you know and and this particular Rumi talks about it a lot, and I practice surrendering, not always successfully. We are human beings. We stumble, we fall, but I try to practice it in the little things. I didn't sleep well last night, and it's like I could either bang my head and say, "Oh, why didn't you sleep better?" Or you should have done this. You should have done. But to just say, I surrender to the state of my body and my mind as it's feeling right now. It just takes away the anxiety. It takes away the anxiety and the heaviness and the problems that we are associating with not sleeping well.
I love that. I'll often go at that point and I will say, thank you for my waking rested and refreshed. Rested and refreshed. And I'll just put that out there so that even if I get only an hour of sleep, I'm at peace. So when I wake,
Yes.
I will feel more rested and refreshed. Going back to the boat for a minute, my wife Jessica and I, she's the producer, we were having a long discussion yesterday. It spilled over into today even. We have a lot of balls up in the air as she's pregnant now, as we're doing more building on our business. We're doing some changes for this year, so we'll have more time with the baby. And I say to her, and this drives her nuts, I say, I am completely lost. I am like a ship in the sea that's come unmoored. And she goes, well, that sounds terrible. And I'm like, no, It's beautiful. It's perfect. It means I don't have a clue. I'm not supposed to. And I'm going to allow this boat to see where it ends up and have faith that this is going to work itself out.
That is beautiful, Michael. And I can see why your wife might think that's a terrible image. But and you're right. You're right. I condone with her, and I condone with you because you're being honest about where you're coming from. Is this your first child?
Absolutely, yes.
Yes, you see. So and males bear the child just as much as a woman does, and the male is worried about how this is going to happen, and the woman's body is secreting all these hormones to tell it to relax, but while you don't have those hormones, you're trying to
We're building the
navigate.
roof and building the walls. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. You're trying to navigate this very new experience, and you're admitting that you're helpless here, and you're asking for help, and your awareness that you need the help, and that because you are in these rocky waters and in a stormy waters, and Guru Nanak calls it the burning world ocean, and we've all experienced that. And so to know that you don't have a clue is the first step towards having a clue. You know, I don't have a clue. Help me. Guide me. Take me to a wonderful outcome. And you use the word trust.
Yes.
To just trust that this gift that you have been given by the universe. I mean, every conception and birth is a miracle.
It's true.
It is a miracle, and so you pray that all goes well, and you make that a daily practice, and you visualize things going well, and you solicit help, because help is out there, and your wife is telling you to relax, and so listen to her, because a lot of the times men don't want to listen to their wives. So and they just want to keep their own independence. But I think sometimes when your wife is giving you the good advice, and especially it's the advice to calm down, take it easy, it's always good to hear that and to follow that as much as you can.
So let's go from there. Let's go back to when you first got married. What does this line mean to you? Listen to the reed, how it tells a tale, complaining of separations.
That was the line that stopped my heart and at once made it beat harder. It was like a racehorse that runs the way it runs when it's going home to its stables. I used to ride once, and you can whip them, and you can talk them into going to all these places. But as they're riding home, they're just kind of like speeding.
We call it
And
barn fever.
barn fever. What a wonderful phrase. So I had barn fever, and I thought to myself, listen to the reed, how it sings of separations. I have written a book on Krishna, also from the Indian tradition, and that book is called Ganesha Goes to Lunch. And I like to read. I like to read about and write about different traditions. So the Sikh tradition, the Sufi tradition, and the Hindu tradition. So this was like Krishna's flute calling to me from the Sufi tradition. Listen to the reed. And Krishna's flute calls you. What does it call you? It calls you from your mundane, everyday, business as usual world, and makes you want to go to this place that you can't name, that but that somehow it's called home. You know, it's the home beyond home that your soul lives in. You know, so Rumi's words called to me. And what is the separation he talks about? It is the separation from what we call God and what we call the matrix, the everything, the all that exists outside and within us, you know, in every pore of our skins. So it is this separation because we don't recognize that we are separated from it. You know, to recognize that we are separated from it is the first step towards getting closer to it. It's like you're not having a clue is a step towards having a clue,
Yeah.
you know? And so what we are separated from it and we want to get closer to it because getting closer to it really is the solution of all our problems. You know, it gives us meaning. It gives us a direction to travel. It gives us a well-trodden path that guides of all times have trodden before us, from the you know, Jewish tradition, from the Buddhist tradition, from all traditions. It is we are being given the same message, you know, and it's a message of reunification, of getting back to that singularity, the oneness that we came from, you know. And Rumi goes on to say that the reed sings of the moaning of man and woman. You know, we moan and the reed sings. But then Rumi twists it around, and instead of it being a moan, he says, um, the moaning is from thee. You play us and we sing, you know? So he's Rumi is really good, and all our guides are really good about taking all our negativity and twisting it in a way that we realize that it is a gain and a benefit and wealth. All our tragedies and all our losses are portals. They're portals into this other world, you know, because what do our tragedies tear off the scabs from our hearts, you know, and we enter what Guru Nanak calls the pilgrimage to ourselves. You know, when everything stops, fails to work for us, our jobs, our money, our houses, our fame, everything fails to work for us, then this is an opening. And it's really the only opening that human beings are required to walk through.
You share so many beautiful stories in here of Rumi, and in each story, there are challenges. There is tragedy. There is, as Rumi calls it, the wound is where the light enters. That
Yes.
each one, and the common thread, you play us. If we can understand the game and the meaning, the word play, the joy that is actually hidden on the other side of the doorway from that tragedy, it changes everything, doesn't it?
Yes. Yes, it really does. It's like alchemy, you know. You're going about with, you know, 10 tons of lead on your head,
Yeah.
and you know, you turn a particular way, and you change your thinking around it, because you know our thinking propels us. You start thinking a certain way, and that's what our guides do. They twist our thinking into ways and looking at the light. And when you do that, when you just take one tiny glance in that direction, like Rumi says, you know, go from the shadow, gain a sun, you know, and when you look at it, that lead on your head becomes gold, and it becomes light as a feather, you know, and you realize that you've been given enormous wealth, that you are the wealth, that your heart is the wealth, and your heart's ability to turn and see things in a different light are the wealth.
You say, because you talked about birds here for a second, you said, wings are restored to the bird whose plumes were torn away.
Yes. Yes. You know, how often as we go through our lives, our wings are torn away. You know, sometimes you suffer a tragedy, or you suffer a discouragement, or a disappointment, or a loss, and you feel, you feel maimed and wounded, and or you feel like a rod, to use a Christian metaphor, which is a dried up old rod. And this way of thinking, the way of our guides, greens the rod, and it mends our wings. And if a wing has been torn away, we're given another wing. We are taught from our little fledglings that we are. We are pushed out of the nest, and we are pushed out of our nest because our mothers push us out, and because God pushes us out of a nest. And why are we pushed out of our nests and our comfort zones? So we can learn to fly.
Since you mentioned a couple things here. You mentioned mothers just now, and a few minutes ago you mentioned alchemy. Your mother, in a sense, she turned coal into oil.
Yes, she did. You want to hear that story again?
Yes, please.
Okay, so my father had just retired as a brigadier in the army, and even though he'd reached a very high rank, you had really perks, but Dad didn't have a house, and he had 3 children to marry off. He didn't have to marry me off. I just took my dowry and ran, but he had 2 other, children, and so he was very, very, very worried, and my mother was, and my mother's like she's like your wife. Don't worry, don't put such a negative spin on things. God will provide. My mother's always, God will provide, and she considered God as her buddy, like all I have to do is turn to my buddy. She was, by the way, the 16th descendant, one of the many, many people who claimed to be descendants of Guru Nanak, the first Sikh guru.
Wow.
And had a very strong spiritual streak. So, and sure enough, magically, one of the governors that Dad. So she had a dream one night. She was very upset. My dad was very upset, and she went to weeping. She went to sleep, and she had this dream where the 10th Guru of the Sikhs is shoveling coal, and he's saying in Punjabi, he says, "God bless coal," and coal, and may the coal be gold. Okay, so my mother woke up and told my father, this dream, and sure enough, after some time, not a very long time, a governor that my father had worked for called him to the house and asked my father, "Is there anything I can do for you?" Because he really loved my father. And my father says, "I don't want anything, but my wife is nudging me and kind of saying, ask to get a petrol station," because that's what we call them in India. Those were very lucrative back then. So he said, "I'll see what I can do." So after, from 5,000 applicants, my father won the petrol pump, and the coal turned into gold. My mother was very psychic in many ways, and she had many prescient dreams. So she was able to build the house of her dreams, and to buy all the expensive Kashmiri shawls, embroidered woven shawls that she loved. So um, she was provided for.
Very, very cool. So this gets to the idea, and we'll get to dreams probably in a little bit here, but it gets to the idea of listening. And you keep mentioning guides. Now, I do automatic writing each morning, and I'm in contact with what I consider my guides. What do you consider guides, and how do we build this relationship or be able to hear from them?
Yes. You know, listening means literal listening with our ears. Whenever you hear something that kind of rings a bell in your heart, you stop and you listen to it. And we listen from a lot of sources. You know, if you are interested in listening and if you are interested in hearing from the many sources that are given to us, it's all around us, you know, through books, through um, live guides, through guides that have passed on in their writings. You listen to the, you listen to them, and Rumi has a wonderful metaphor. He says, "I took the saint's words and put them as a earring in my ear." And he listening also means is very closely tied with the word obedience and discipline. What that means is if you say, hear a guide telling you it's important to listen, then you not only listen, but you obey that injunction. You obey it and you surrender to it and you follow it through discipline. You know, everything is discipline. And our guides tell us. I mean, Guru Nanak, for example, says, if you conquer your mind, you conquer the world. That is ultimately what we have to conquer, because our mind takes us into these frightful scenarios, and our mind takes us on our mind makes our boats wobble, you know, and our mind creates storms. Sometimes the storms are created for us, but we also co-create the storms, you know. So to uh, it is through discipline, even in our little boat. And what kind of disciplines? The disciplines of meditation, to listening, to listening to people who make sense, through reading, through doing yoga. I think doing yoga is very important, to doing exercise, because our body needs to be exercised as much as our mind. And let us not think these are two separate things. You know, they have coexisted forever. Consciousness, our minds, our bodies have coexisted forever. So, you know, let us do things for our body. Let's honor our body and love it, just like let's love ourselves. Let's love our minds, send our minds the message that we love it, but we would like it to be just a little more controlled. And our mind is like a wild horse. It's ready. It's ready and receptive to be controlled.
So there's so many beautiful directions I can go here. I'm thinking of Yogananda, who taught that yoga was just preparation for the meditation, for samadhi that comes after. But the two go hand in hand. You're not just going to jump into meditation while neglecting and not preparing the body first.
Yes, yes, that including pranayama, breathing, you know, which I'm so happy to say that the culture has become aware uh, of the
Yes.
prominence of breathing and the importance. I mean, I finally broke down, bought myself an Apple Watch, and it tells me occasionally. Sometimes it annoys me because it tells me to breathe at an inconvenient time.
I love
But
it.
but you know, but it is a reminder. It is a reminder. Sometimes I listen to it.
Mhm.
Sometimes I listen to it because technology, like everything else in the universe, can be used either help us or harm us, and we have to learn where how to use it and not abuse it, you know.
I have
So
a
breathing.
I have a Garmin watch here, which will measure my stress levels And my stress levels are determined by my heart coherence, which is determined by my breath. The lower the yellow lines are, it says I am breathing better. I am staying present here.
Oh, you have to write that down for me and send it to me
I
sometime.
will do that, absolutely.
I would love that. Thank you.
So interesting, you said meditation a few minutes ago, and I'm thinking of the story of King David in here, who
Of?
King David, one of the stories
Yes,
in the
yes.
in your beautiful book here, and he's been given a, on the surface, seems like a hard decision to make, and he passes judgment. He's considered the most, the wisest and the most judicious, I don't know if there's a better word, person in the land, and he passes judgment, and then he goes, wait, I'm going to step back. In essence, he goes, I'm going to sleep on this, and I'm going to go take time, and I'm going to meditate, and I'm going to listen. And he comes back with a very different answer the next day. And I take this as such an important lesson for us.
Yes. Because, it's an important lesson for us, especially in that story that you're talking about. And I think it's called The Dark Root of Justice. That so often we judge based on appearance. So that's the relevant message to us, politically, socially, during our times, but has deeper roots. We judge on appearance, and we don't meditate within ourselves to realize or to see the oneness that the same life flows through everything, every being, everything, whether animate or inanimate. The deeper meaning of that is that when you meditate, you get answers to things that you might think are very obvious to you, and you're going through, you're reaching conclusions based on your ego or on the way anybody else or everybody else might arrive at that decision. But if you take that pause between taking a decision and delivering judgment on it, then that pause in which you meditate can give you answers that can twist you around and show you a different way of seeing something altogether.
That gets us to the first story in your book. If we want to talk about twisting around, it's the story We Never Know Why. And poor Ahmed wakes up in a pasture and is just getting the beating of a lifetime.
Yes, he gets beaten, he gets whipped, he gets prodded, he gets chased, he gets just, by a stranger who he doesn't even know. Go here, go there, God damn it, eat these apples, stuff your face with these apples, more apples, more apples, more apples. Now drink and drink and drink. And this guy saying, the universe makes no sense. It's better to die. He's so upset at this. So, but as soon as he drinks a lot of water, he vomits. And what does he see in his vomit? He sees a black, writhing, live snake. And he turns to the stranger and the stranger says to him, that I forget the story, but this is the gist of it. And the guy says, "Why didn't you tell me?" The stranger says, "I saw the snake slithering into your mouth while you were sleeping with your mouth awake, and so I did all this to get the snake out of you." So this Jalaluddin says, "Well, why didn't you tell me right in the beginning? And I would have, instead of beating me and whipping me," he said, "if I told you right in the beginning you'd swallowed a snake, you would have died of fright." So Jalaluddin comes to the awareness that all the beating he has gotten is for his own good. It is to awaken him to the truth that sometimes you have to suffer a lot in order to heal yourself. So that is a very important story to me, because I try to remember. I don't always remember it, when I'm being whipped and prodded and beaten by life. Sometimes I forget it's for my own good. Sometimes we all forget. We are all human. But it's important to come back to that point.
And you can take this even a step further. You say how miserable we make ourselves by thinking that our point of view, this guy is beating me, he's trying to kill me, he was actually trying to rescue him. We think that our point of view is the truth. And I put that in quotes.
Oh, that is so important. Hey, that's so important in relationships. You might, I've learned that about my own relationship.
Yeah.
Every time we have a fight, it's because he thinks his point of view is right, and I think my point of view is right, and this is what happens. So if we can, again, take that pause, the pause that King David took in that story, and step back and ask ourselves, hey, could I be wrong here? Do I need something to learn here? And if you do that, you'll have your fights will get less frequent, and you will have a more amiable relationship. And this is, I think, as crucial in any relationship, whether it's with your child or your parent or your mother or your father or your friend. The question here is, do I have something to learn here?
That brings up, I think Rumi is, throughout all of his stories, he's gifting us with a mirror. And if we go to the story of Taslim and the harp, the next story, he realizes what a gift he's been given once he can flip that mirror on himself toward becoming introspective, examining his own psyche.
Great. I should have mentioned that in the commentary. But if I ever have another edition, I'll mention that it also stands for introspection. Thank you, Michael. Yes. And introspection, and because introspection is you're looking at yourself, and to keep that mirror. Rumi keeps saying, keep that mirror clear. If your mirror is cloudy and your mirror is tarnished by wrong thinking, by mistaken and erroneous thinking, which stems from your ego, stems from the thinking that, hey, my opinion is right and I'm right, then, and if you polish it with humility, and if you polish it with the knowledge that there is so much more to learn about yourself, always more to learn about yourself. Look at the motto at Delphi, the Greek motto, know thyself, and so, and how do you know yourself? You know thyself by looking at yourself in the mirror of your own heart and in the mirror of your own mind, and asking yourself this question, and stepping back from yourself a little bit and asking yourself, is there room here for error? And there always is.
I'm laughing because, oh heck yeah, at least for myself.
There always is. There's always room for error in our thought.
Let's go from there to riding tigers of doubt.
Right. Yes, that's a funny story, and the men I know really love it. And what exactly did you want to know about it? Shall I summarize it briefly?
You can summarize it briefly, and I want to understand, or I want people to help understand. You say here specifically, don't be overwhelmed by the tiger of your doubt, my friend. This is part of the story. Ride them.
Yes. Okay. So, doubts attack us the way tigers attack you. I mean, I just read in the news the other day about a lion who attacked its owner and killed it, you know. So similarly, I mean, Guru Nanak has, again, has a word for it, and Rumi does too. I mean, if you've read the story, and this belongs to, there also a lion kills a wolf, you know.
The wolf
You
who
can.
thought he was doing the right thing. I'll split it up. You get this, you get that. All I'll get is this little piece here. And
Anti-just.
yes,
Yes, yes. So in that story also, you know, doubts always attack us, and all sorts of doubts. We worry if we are good enough. We worry if all this God business and the spiritual business is just mumbo jumbo, or if there's some truth to it. Like the dervish in Taming the Tiger doubts. You know, maybe I'm wrong about this dervish. You know, maybe there's no such thing as an enlightened man, or maybe there's there's no such, there's no meaning to existence, there is no pattern to our lives, you know. All these are doubts that attack and maul us. You know, they maul us once we are, and they can kill us. Frankly, they can kill us.
oh, heck
And there's no doubt of it. You know, I can say this in all honesty because my previous husband killed himself. So I am very cognizant of how um, the uncontrolled mind, and I'm not sure that that was all that was the cause of that, but in myself I recognize it, that it's my uncontrolled mind that mauls me and takes me places that are dark and unhappy. Who wants to go there? Who wants to be unhappy? Who wants to be agitated or anxious? You know, none of us do. So one of the ways to tame our tigers is to again put that pause and to examine our minds and to stop for a moment and say, "Hey, I'm on the wrong track here. I'm on the wrong track here. Let me sit down and let me just reconsider this." And ask yourself the question, no, it's not making me happy. It's making me anxious. It's upsetting me. It's making me angry. It's making me doubt. I'm not in a good place. So how do I get in a good place? And one of them is to read the gurus, read the guides, listen to them, obey them, and secondly is to know that you don't know. If you know you don't know, then you're already on the step to knowing. You know, it's like if you're clueless, then if you know you're clueless, then you got a clue.
I
That's a
like it.
clue.
Let's go to another clue. Next story, because we're talking about, and I'm so sorry I didn't know that about your husband, your last husband. Let's talk about a little bit about the story of, if I get this right, name right, Jalaluddin, who is a musician, depressive and sorrowful by nature, but he turned to prayer and praise through music and song, especially, to bring him back up and out of the hole.
Yes, Jalaluddin is another example. You know, he's depressive and he's always kind of mealy mouthed, and he's a musician, so which means that he's got a soul that he hasn't listened to. You know, and when he gets really, really deeply into a funk, he does the right thing. He goes to a guide, and the guide tells him, "Pray." And Jalaluddin prays. And he prays and he prays till his lips grow sweet.
I love that line.
That's such a wonderful line from Rumi. He plays. But then suddenly Satan, you know, Iblis, it's called in Islam, you know, comes to him and says, "What are you praying to? There's nobody exists. Does anybody ever say, 'I'm here'? When you call out, 'Hey Allah,' do you hear anybody who says, 'I'm there'?" And Jalaluddin starts doubting again, and he's mauled by the tiger of doubt again, you know, and he gets even more depressed. And then what does he do? He sleeps. And because there's hope for his soul, he falls asleep. And a guide is sent to him in his dream. And in the dream, he dreams that, his mouth is locked with the shackle of a lip, of a lock, and he can't, and he's very, very thirsty, and he wants to drink from the clear stream that's in front of him, but he can't. So he can't do it till he realizes that he really does need to pray again. And once and there's this dream is multi-layered, and but once he realizes that he needs to pray, and he prays, as soon as he prays, the lock is sprung open, and he drinks from the thirst. What is thirst? Is a metaphor for that in our heart and in our mind, which is not satisfied by anything else you might gain, fame or fortune or wealth, or a lot of money, or winning the lottery. None of it really works. Ultimately, what works is turning to the right direction, turning in the right direction. And the story, I like the title of the story. I call it The Cup of Praise, because that's what he does. Praise is the highest form of prayer, by the way, because with praise, you're not thinking about yourself. You're not saying, give me, help me, which also is a really good way to pray. I mean, who else are we going to turn to when we are in dire straits? Help me, I'm lost. But in praise, what you do is you turn to this vaster life that lives you, of which you are a minuscule part. And by turning to it, but just by remembering it, and how do you praise it? You praise it through your life, just the view outside my window, the birds that come to feed from the trough of food, looking at the ocean, looking at a tree, looking at the clouds, looking at these beautiful desert flowers I saw yesterday that just transported me to a different realm. It was like being in a different world entirely. They're desert flowers that bloomed after a huge rain, and
I love
they
it.
are exquisite. So that is praise. Praising nature is praise. Praising nature, remembering that we are part of a huge and beautiful life, which can also get terrible at times, but we have recourse in times of terror also. And so when we praise, we are drinking from the cup of praise. And what are we drinking? Elixir, total ambrosia, something that transforms our life. It's what the quest for the Holy Grail is from another tradition. It's the Holy Grail that we are seeking to drink out of.
I love it. So many directions I can go here. I want to see how much time we have left. Before we do that, first off, where can people go to find your beautiful book? I can't recommend this enough. I was coddling it earlier today. Where can people go to find your beautiful book and to find out more?
They can go to Amazon.com. It's available there. It's also available on my website, which is my full name, which is Kamla, Kamla K, which is my middle name, Kaur, and my last name, Kapur, KAPUR.com. And that's Kamla K Kapur.com. And the Kamla doesn't have a second A in it the way Kamala Harris has, for example. It's just KAMLA KAPUR.com. Thank you for asking that question. I deeply appreciate it. And I hope that people will buy this book, simply because, not because I want to beat my own drum. I probably do want to beat my own drum too, because I'm just as infested with ego as the rest of us are. But basically, because I would like more copies of the books to sell, so that my publisher will pick up another book that I have written that's been published in India, and I want them to pick it up and publish it for the rest of the world also. It's received very, very well in India. It's called Into the Great Heart, and so buy it please, and gift it to people. And I'm not peddling somebody that's not as wealthy as Rumi is. Rumi can offer something to everybody if you take him seriously, if you listen, and if you obey.
You are you're peddling sweetness, and you're peddling an elixir to our soul. What more could we want? And when you get, and you will, Into the Great Heart published here, we want you back.
Right, and I'm ready. If the universe wills, I'm right here.
I love it. So what would top 3 tips, if you were to give me top 3 tips, I'm going to take my coaching hat, give it to you, top 3 tips today for opening or healing our heart from Rumi?
3 tips. And the 3 tips are the 3 sections of the book. The first are stories and commentaries about the power of prayer. And the second part is embrace suffering. Don't turn away from suffering, because suffering is a portal. Suffering is a gift.
Thank you.
It's something that's given to you, which is a key to opening that portal to the vaster world. And the third thing is surrender to the cosmic will. And the cosmic will is that what is, despite all your efforts to change it. We always try to change things for the better. Sometimes they change better for the better. Sometimes they take longer to change for the better, but they're always for the better. I mean, I have experienced this in my own life through my own tragedies. I'm even willing to say, even the suicide of my husband, which was one of the worst experiences of my life, much good came from that, because I have been taught by my guides to embrace the suffering that was inflicted on my heart, that wounded me, because our wounds heal us.
Woohoo! You have 2 beautiful stories at the end. Whichever one resonates more with you, I'd like to hear a little bit about it. You've got, and they both have the same theme. You've got Ayaz and a pearl, and what he's asked to do with the pearl. And then you have, as you mentioned earlier, the wolf, the fox, and the king. The wolf, the fox, and the lion.
Yes. So you want me to tell you about the stories?
Whichever one touches your heart right now.
Okay. The story about the pearl is really important. It's King Hamid. Everybody thinks people think he's gone crazy because he takes out a wonderful pearl. That's the best pearl you can have in the whole world. It's really huge and lustrous, and it's like the envy of everybody. So he tells his minister. He gives the pearl to the minister and says, "You put it in this mortar and pestle and grind it to bits."
Yes.
And of course, the treasurer is just totally appalled. He thinks the king is testing him, and he says, "I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. This is, so it's so precious. It's worth so much money, so many kingdoms." So King Hamid becomes really sad, but he says to the minister, here's a coat for you, here are some robes, here's more money for you for thinking about my treasury. But he's still really quite sad about it. And he calls 2 other people from his ministry, and he says to them, here's the pearl, And of course, what the ministers think is if we say, "Oh, how beautiful the pearl is," we're not going to smash it. He's going to give us gifts. So they say the same thing. They imitate the first minister, and they say, "No, no, no, we're not going to." And of course, they all get gifts. And King Hamid is very, very depressed, and he's about to kind of retire for the night till he sees this ragged old person in old clothes and with a sheepskin jacket and torn shoes and looking quite raggedy like a beggar. He sees him and everybody's trying to get rid of him. Here's about appearance again. Don't go by appearance. He's the wealth of the world, and his name is Ayaz, and he says, "What are you?" And everybody's trying to get rid of him, and Hamid goes to him, "Speak," he says. "What are you here for?" And he says, "I'm here to serve you." So he says, then here's the pearl, to put it in this mortar and the pestle and grind it to bit. And without any thought, that's what Ayaz does. He takes the pestle and the mortar, and he just totally destroys the pearl. And King Hamid is so joyous. He's dancing. He's happy. And he says, "Ayaz, you are my pearl. I have found you." And, the kings in Rumi stories are a symbol for the power, the great power of God. And sometimes God asks us to destroy things and asks us to not care so much for our possessions, not be so attached to our possessions, but be more attached to the will of the universe and obey it, listen to it, be ready to sacrifice anything for it, be it your life, be it your health. Sacrifice is the ultimate lesson. We have always to be ready to sacrifice what is called upon us to sacrifice. It includes the death of people we love, losses, our gains, everything. Don't be attached to any of it. That's the lesson. That's the lesson.
Two last questions, but I'm going to add a little asterisk to it, which is that Rumi is not necessarily saying you have to live the life of a pauper or that you can't have material possessions. Actually, far from it. He's saying you can have that. But when you are called upon, when you feel a direction, when you open up and say, "I am willing," go to that higher calling.
There's nothing wrong with possessions. There's nothing wrong with wealth. We are all wired to be successful in the ways that we want to be successful. It is a God-given gift to us to want to be successful. Who can quarrel with that? Nobody can quarrel with it. There is a character in the book, a woman called Aziza, I think her name is, and it's called the Jug or something like that. And she wants wealth, and she talks her husband into it. Of course, her husband is really against materiality, and she's a material girl, and she prays. How does she get her answer to the husband and the wife are fighting? The husband says you're really material, and she says, I like being material because they got nothing, they don't have much, they're poor people. And so she what does she do? She prays and she sleeps over it, and she has a dream, and the dream shows her the way. Dreams are a wonderful thing. They can show you the way.
Well, that's actually one of the big themes here with Rumi, is to pay real attention to your dreams. Those are our guides, aren't they?
Exactly. Dreams are our guides. Dreams are our guides. And so she tells her husband to go to, the Sultan of Baghdad. And of course, he goes there, and he gets a lot of riches. And but in addition to that, he gets the wealth of all wealths, which is being and walking on the way, and which is our true wealth, which is are wealth par excellence, and he writes a wonderful image, and he realizes that man and woman are the two wings of a bird that flies to paradise. Materiality and spirituality are the two wings of the bird that flies to paradise. How can we not be material? We are material beings. But please also find your spiritual being for the balance.
Woohoo! Two really quick last questions. First off, my wife would not let me get off the line without asking, what advice would you give, or would Rumi give, parents to help with their kids today?
I really don't know. I haven't read a story about parents and kids, but I have a very dark story about that, which I don't want to mention. But I would, considering having studied Rumi, and from my own life, I would say that our kids inherit a lot from us, just the way I have inherited a lot from my parents.
Mm-hmm.
And please be aware of that. Know that they follow you. That nurture and nature go hand in hand. So give them good instruction. But before you do that, be on the path yourself. Commit yourself to being on the path so that you can pass it on to your children. Your children, start them off early on what a good human being is. And a good human being not only pays attention to the people around him or her, but also to what happens in their mind, and to be aware of that.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. This has been phenomenal, Kamla. I want to recommend everybody get the book. I love it, I love it, I love it. I can't speak highly enough about it. Any last words of wisdom do you want to share with people today to help them on the way?
Well, I think read my book, because I think it does show a path. I would say whatever religion you belong to, uh, whatever path you feel strongly about, um, uh, and are passionate about, uh, you don't have to change paths, provided you are critical about that path. Don't buy everything blindly that you're told. Don't specially buy into a religion that tells you to discriminate against any other human being, because we are one. And I think if you're a Christian, go to Christ, go to the source, go to love thy neighbor. Go, if you're Islamic or Sufi, read Rumi, read the Sufis who know that we are all one, and that go with your passionate preference of your religion and your spiritual tradition, with a little bit of critical intelligence, and don't neglect the critical intelligence, and then commit yourself to finding a way and staying on it. That would be
Woohoo!
that would be my last word.
Thank you so, so much, Kamla. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, for having me on your show. I deeply appreciate it. I deeply appreciate the questions you asked. I deeply appreciate your reading the book, and thank you for reading it. And thank you, and being grateful. I'm very grateful. And the last words I would leave you with would I'm keeping a great gratitude diary, and write in it all the things, remember all the things learn to count again by counting your gratitude for all the things that are right in your life. Keep a gratitude journal, and you'll find there's more things to think about and be grateful about. Starting with your little pinky, all you have to have is have your pinky go wrong, and you'd realize how upsetting that can be. And with every little part of your body that's functioning or even not functioning. I have TMJ, and I'm using my TMJ as a sort of a relearning posture. So what I'm doing is I'm taking something that hurts me and upsets me, and taking it as a gift. I'm even thanking my TMJ for teaching me how to stand straight and to sit right. So be grateful.
And I am grateful for having you on the show, and I'm grateful for your words of wisdom, and I'm grateful for the work that you're doing, and for all that you have brought us and helping open our hearts today. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
So for everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, get Rumi, Tales of the Spirit, and begin opening your heart today and shine bright. Woohoo! I want to give you the biggest hug, Kamla. Thank you so much.
I'm giving you a hug. I've got my arms around Michael. Hugs are great.
I love you.
That's my last point. Hugs.
What more can we say?
Love you, Michael.
Love you too. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like below. Also, leave your comments. Have some real fun with it. Subscribe to our channel where you're going to get more great videos, more interviews coming up. And check out our website, inspirenationshow.com. That's where you'll find tips, blogs, information, videos you won't find anywhere else, and useful and helpful resources to really help you kickstart your life and to shine bright. Thanks so much again. Thank you for your support. Like, comment, subscribe. See the website. Thanks so much and have fun. Of course, shine bright. Woohoo!